Well, a big battle in the Western Conference of Major League Soccer this weekend. In fact, it'll have a national audience on FS1 and Fox Deportes. Lincoln Rose, along with Joe Tutino, longtime voice of one of the original members of Major League Soccer, the Los Angeles Galaxy. Joe, if I have counted correctly, you've had a chance to call 8 MLS Cup finals. 5 of them led to stars on the kit of the Galaxy along the way.
I have had that honor. Yes, sir.
Joe, great to have you with us. These two teams met twice last year, with Austin going to LA during that 8-match road swing to begin Austin's inaugural season. Brad Stuver won over a lot of the fan base with a denial of Chicharito's PK, only to see both Leggett and Javier Chicharito Hernandez both come up with the goals. You all claimed the winner 2-0. Austin last September would return the favor. What struck me when I was looking at my old notes while typing up this week's notes was the fact that Austin was going for its 6th win of the season when they hosted the Galaxy in September. Right now, Austin already sits on 6 wins. What do you recall from those 2 meetings between these 2 clubs?
Well, I mean, early on, you look at an expansion club trying to find their way, and what all expansion clubs do, usually have a hard time at one end of the park or the other. For Austin, it was finding the back of the net, and the Galaxy had the good fortune of the first time around. Later on in the season, I mean, that was a dagger for the Galaxy. They were trying to find their way into the playoffs. They were still holding on to a playoff spot, I believe, at about that point, and but they just could not turn things around. And so that was a big loss for the Galaxy against Austin on that second meeting for sure.
That was late September. Musa Jite collected his first goal for Austin. Julian Gaines, Mackenzie Gaines, Julian's brother, found his first goal for Austin FC along the way. And the fans treated us to some great tifo with Selena Quintanilla on it as well. A memorable matchup there late in September. Meanwhile, one season later, both these clubs are sitting right atop the Western Conference, 2 of the top 3. What have you seen so far in the Galaxy that leads you to believe that they're regaining their old form?
Well, I think the best thing about the Galaxy right now in the first part of the season has been their defensive play. And when I say that, it's not necessarily keeping balls out of the net, it's keeping shots away from their goal. And they've done a really good job of that so far this season. They've protected their goal and protected their goalkeepers, who have been, over the last few years, not just last year, but over the last few years, maybe 3 to 5 years, shell-shocked. Too many shots on the goalkeeper and too many reasons for them to make outstanding saves. And it's always good to have them be bored back there from time to time. And this side, so far this season, the Galaxy have done a good job of that.
Before we dive much further into the team itself, we wanted to introduce anybody who somehow has been under a rock for the past quarter century of MLS and has not stumbled across one of your calls. Your soccer broadcasting career actually predates MLS. I know you got started a lot like Glenn Davis down the road with indoor soccer. It's just a reminder there's a time in our country where actually the only chance really to get any opportunities calling soccer at a professional level was inside in the air-conditioned arena.
Yeah, and how silly I was trying to get into broadcasting, saying, "Hey, I'm going to be a soccer announcer with no outdoor league. How about that?" But I was fortunate. I grew up in San Diego, and the San Diego Sockers were a very good indoor team, winning championships. They won 10 championships in the decade of the 80s, and so it was exciting. It was exciting, and so I followed them when I was a little boy. 78, they came to San Diego playing outdoors, and that became Little League baseball for me was soccer. You know, and so being of Italian descent, that was easy, right? It's in our blood, and so that was my number one sport, and that's what I played. And so, you know, when I got into broadcasting, the reason I got into broadcasting was because of soccer. I thought I was going to be a sports writer, and just out of high school, I said, you know, maybe I should be a broadcaster instead. And of course, that flipped my family out. They're like, "What are you talking about? Nobody's talked about this before." And I went down that road, and I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time. Got in this business 1989 officially, again with a paycheck. 1990, October 1990, we flipped to all sports. There were only a couple other sports stations in the nation at the time, and so I was in the right place at the right time on a very big sports station that was involved with, you know, the San Diego Chargers, the LA Kings, USC football and basketball, UCLA football and basketball eventually, And so I was a pig in mud. And along the way, that allowed me to continue to follow my dream of soccer. And I was, in my high school days and right into my early days going to broadcast school, I was taping games at the San Diego Sports Arena into a tape deck at the very top of the sports arena. And the Soccers allowed me to help out in game setup. And as part of that payback would be, okay, you can go ahead and tape a game and so forth. And I would get critique from the PR guy and the people at the school as well. And so I just kind of continued to go through that opportunity after opportunity, being turned down by teams. Maybe at some time, I think I was offered a job with the Dayton Dynamo of the AISA, and the money wasn't enough to move. And eventually, another indoor league started, the CISL, and I had the opportunity to be the play-by-play announcer for the Anaheim Splash for a few years there, and got my radio experience on the air doing play-by-play, as well as my first TV experience with them.
You mentioned Italian descent. You're a first-generation American, aren't you?
Yeah.
With your mom moving to the States. I think when you talk to her, still speak Italian with her?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my mom doesn't speak any English. So we speak Sicilian at her home. And my dad came here first and then went back and married my mom, and which is a very typical story for immigrants, especially in that era. And so, yeah, so I'm the youngest of three boys, and just had the opportunity to grow with the sport along the way, and have a very good life so far. I've been very fortunate.
Has there been a time professionally in your career where being bilingual, you were able to slip into the other language, whether it be to talk to a player or any other avenue where that has been of help? Obviously, when we think bilingual in soccer, we think, well, that's English and Spanish at the very least. And sure, you're able to talk to half your roster as a result. But I was curious if Italian, Sicilian happened to ever factor in along the way.
Well, I think it's very seldom when it happens, and when I do, the player or the other broadcaster or whoever it might be, they get shocked because they're just, it's like, what are you talking about? You're an American, and what are you doing? But what happens with me a lot is, and I think this happens with a lot of people that grow up in an immigrant family, is in my case, I'll get stuck between two minds in terms of grammatically, in terms of, American English, and then and how a sentence is formulated in Italian or Sicilian. And many people will say, well, where are you from? You're not really from the United States, or you're not really from Southern California. And I'll say, no, this is what a San Diegan sounds like. And then just kind of look at me like, no, that's not the case. But that's what really happens on a normal basis for me in terms of talking to players. For example, Guillermo Barros Scalotto speaks Italian, the former manager of the LA Galaxy. And we got off a plane in Houston, and I started speaking Italian to him, and he just kind of looked at me with a cross eye. And at first he was trying to figure out if I was trying to speak Spanish, and then it clicked in his head that I was speaking Italian. And he, from Argentine descent, his grandparents were from Italy, but he couldn't speak Italian, but he understood it. And therefore, then he had one of his assistant coaches who said, this assistant, I forget his name, said he speaks Italian. And so that's what was happening inside the airport as we walked to find the bus. But other than that, I haven't really had an opportunity to speak the language on a continuous basis. It's weird because when you're outside your family, you default to English. You just don't go into it. And even though somebody understands you, you kind of stay away from it for whatever reason. And we speak in English. Even if I know it's an Italian person and I hear the accent, I know that they know what I would be saying. I just kind of default to English. But inside my mom's home, it's a whole different story.
I asked our Spanish television voice when he dreams, what language does he dream in? What have you ever had a dream where you're speaking and hearing Italian the whole way?
No, I have not. I mean, I seldom dream, but when I do, I believe it's still in English.
Yeah, it seems like most dreams you would have become reality as the voice over there at the LA Galaxy. We mentioned
I've been very lucky. Yeah.
A lot of the world's greatest players have ultimately played on that stage, if not for the Galaxy, against the Galaxy. In terms of the broadcast, obviously, you all are going to garner a lot of attention as the voice and the production of such a historic club. How have you seen the broadcasts for the Galaxy evolve over the years?
Well, I think in the early years, and it's not just the LA Galaxy, I think everybody in Major League Soccer, we were all, doing it on a small budget and trying to make it all happen. And so we did everything in terms, and I still do, I still engineer my own broadcast when I do the radio side of things. And it's because I'm comfortable doing it. And I'm kind of in control of the entire process that way on the radio side of things. So my fingers are involved in our broadcast all the time. And maybe I'm not sure, but maybe our directors on the TV side are a little bit surprised that I'm talking their language from time to time. But that's my background. That's where I come from. In terms of building sports stations along my career, I've always been involved on the back end as well as on the air. And so my mind is just that way in the way things go. But the early years of Major League Soccer, I mean, we did, at most, it was 10 games on television. All of it else was radio. And so we wouldn't have a half-hour pregame show or an hour pregame show on television. We had 5 minutes, and we had producers that really didn't know anything about soccer. They were just producers that knew how to do the other sports, and therefore they were called to do this. And so it was a little bit different. There was like a laundry list of things you had to get to in the broadcast. That's what Major League Soccer wanted everybody to do. And so as long as you got to that laundry list, it was a successful broadcast, to where some of us that knew the game at the time, and I had a great broadcast partner with me at the time, and former New York Cosmos player and a member of the National Soccer Hall of Fame, Rick Davis, was my broadcast partner in the early years. So we had, we come away frustrated a bit, where we're telling the story of the game and we had to stop our story in order to get some things in. But as things evolved, our producers became much more in tune with what we were trying to do. And along the way, I mean, we all grew together. I mean, I grew as a broadcaster. I mean, I'm a totally different person today than I was when the league got underway, in many different ways. I mean, when I started, I was lifelong obesity in terms of me being overweight my entire life. And, luckily, in 2014, I learned how to eat again, and I lost 130 pounds. So there's a lot of things that have changed in my life along the way. So I've been very fortunate that I've been allowed to grow, not only as a broadcaster, but also as a person with Major League Soccer to where I am today.
A couple of things there. Obviously, I think you have the reputation of a fan favorite. You're someone who's approachable despite all of your accomplishments in your career. I know you have the respect of your peers around the league. I remember during the pandemic, several folks made it a point to have you on their shows. Glenn Davis, again, mentioning his name. I the other day listened back to a great chat you all had.
Good man.
You talk about your analysts. Eventually, that analyst became Kobe Jones for you, a guy whose career you covered, and now he's your teammate. I know he's a guy that was one of the first soccer players while I was growing up who caught my attention, probably more so wearing the red, white, and blue than for the Galaxy. Mm-hmm. But what has that partnership been like over the years?
It's been great. I mean, it's been interesting. I mean, he goes from a guy that I was broadcasting his games and fortunately his biggest moments as well with the LA Galaxy to somebody that has become a very good friend. And there's always that separation, broadcasters and players, and I think there should be from where I come from. But when he retired and he became a broadcaster, he was on Galaxy TV before I returned to Galaxy TV once again. And so it was interesting because as a player, I mean, Kobe's the type of guy that kind of stays to himself, and that's okay. You respect it, you stay away from the players, and he was the kind of guy that kind of just stayed within himself and always cordial. But as a broadcaster, then you have to learn, okay, how do I unlock him? and he was already doing it. So it was a kind of easier for me to get in because I already saw some, some games and so forth. And so I understood where Kobe was. But what I learned along the way, and this was early on, is that Kobe and I, fortunately for me, we see the game very similarly. And maybe that's because he's just a gentleman and allowing me to say silly things and going along with it. But most of the time, even when we're talking off the air, we kind of see the game similarly. And I think being able to watch him and announce his games as a player allowed for me to be able to fit in with his thoughts as well. So my most important thing is teeing him up and doing the right type of tee up so he can, give his thoughts and the proper thoughts to what we're the story we're telling.
When there is national TV, you slide over to radio. Do you have anything that reminds you to maybe give the score and the time a little bit more often than perhaps you would on the TV broadcast?
Just a mental clock. I try to do it every 5 minutes as the game goes on and it's more intense. Then I'll do it a little more as things go on, goal kicks, corner kicks, and so forth. And I'll throw that in there a little bit more to again remind the audience who's listening where we are in the game and why it's so important to be here and stay here with us. But in terms of when you do a game on radio, your audience is blind. And I know we can all pick up the game these days, the video version of the game, whether it's online or TV or whatever. But when you do a radio broadcast, you have to understand that the reason why they're listening to you is most likely they don't have the video in front of you, in front of themselves. So they're probably driving, or maybe they're watching something else. Something else is going on. So as far as you're concerned, your audience is blind, and you have to paint the picture. You have to paint what the field looks like. You have to paint where the ball is. You have to paint where other players are in supporting the play. That's the way I see it. And defensively, how they look, the opposing team looks. And that's how I look at that. And so you're doing a lot more talking, a lot more describing. And I like to at least put a pin on where the ball is, but I always like to describe who's off the ball and where they are. From the Galaxy standpoint, offensively, from the Galaxy standpoint, defensively. And sometimes if the Galaxy are, sustaining pressure from teams, then you also have to say, hey, this is what's happening and why the Galaxy are playing a certain way. And all that, then you have to unzip from that when you're on television and let the game breathe a little bit. And I've told others, young people who have asked, I said, when you're on television, the game is like a bottle of wine. Pop the cork, let it breathe a bit. And there'll be times when you go in and you start doing your play-by-play, but you don't have to. There's a big middle third that you can kind of pull back on and let the game, present itself and go from there.
All right, so we'll dive into the reason why we're here, and that is the first of two meetings this month between Austin and LA. You all come to Austin this Sunday, while near the end of the month, Austin returns the favor. What does a week of preparation for Austin FC look like for you, seeing them for the first time this year?
I'll go back and look at the games. I'll go back and certainly look at what you guys did last game. You come from behind victory. They've been impressive, honestly. You guys have been impressive so far off the start. Driussi has been an impressive player with his 7 goals, and Fagundo has 6 assists, so he's leading the way as well. To me, I don't know that I can take too much from last year and bring it forward with this team and apply it. I think you lost your goalkeeper last game as well. I don't know if he's going to be there on Saturday, or it's going to be Tarbell again, which is fine. I've seen him before as well in his career in Major League Soccer, so I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with a lot of players that you have on the roster because I've been fortunate enough to see them. Jimenez with the Galaxy, and Jimenez playing at Columbus as well. He's a good young man, a good friend. And so if he gets out there, I'll be able to understand what's going on with him. But I will look at this more so from where the season has started and how the team has played, numbers top to bottom, defensively, offensively, than I will going back to last season, because I understand how difficult it is to be an expansion club in Major League Soccer. Few and far between really jump up to the top and take the league by storm. We've seen that through a couple of teams. However, it's still rare.
Uh, again, talking to Joe Tutino, the voice of the Los Angeles Galaxy. And so the Galaxy last year, you have a winning record, but you miss out. You're tied for 7th in the West, and RSL ultimately, by virtue of having one more victory on the year, despite even on the points, gets that final spot. What was the priority for the Galaxy in the offseason, and how have you seen that factor into the successful start so far?
Well, I think there were a couple of priorities for the Galaxy in terms of they wanted to shore up the middle of the park so they can defend a little higher, win the ball higher. We've seen that all right so far. Mark Delgado has been great coming in, teaming up with Ryan Raveloson in the middle of the park there with the Galaxy. We thought we'd have Jorge Villafaña there as left back, but unfortunately his body didn't hold up, and he's coming back from rehab at the moment. And so Raheem Edwards, he was brought in the offseason. I thought he was going to be a number 2, but he has been, I don't want to say a revelation, but I want to give him the credit he deserves. He's been great. He's been fantastic playing the left back position for the Galaxy, and he's given the Galaxy a new dynamic bombing forward from that position, but it's not necessarily bombing forward and overlapping onto the wings. He bombs forward and he zips into the penalty area off the off shoulder of the right back in this particular case, and he forces the right back to turn towards his own goal, and he forces the center back to come out and watch him. That's a big weapon for the Galaxy, because he's able to, with his speed and his ability to keep the ball on his foot, or maybe just kind of dribble through potential tackles, to disrupt the opponent. And he does a very good job of that. And he does a really good job of tracking back, and he has enough speed to recover from maybe getting too far down into the offensive end. So in that regard, those are the 2 big moves the Galaxy have made that have turned out to be really good so far this season. The other thing is Chicharito had a nice start off to 5 goals on the year, and he's been a little quiet the last couple of games. So I think he's going to want to turn things around. But I think the Galaxy at this moment offensively, they're looking for the other contributors on a regular basis. They're kind of one-offs here and there, but they need somebody to, if Chicha's got 5, somebody has to have 3 and assists and so forth. And in our case, the Galaxy's case, Raheem Edwards has the most assists on the year with 5 on the season so far. And he was tops in the league and tied tops in the league for quite some time before that changed recently. So those are the 2 things. I think defensively in the middle of the park, having Derek Williams there and Sega Koulibaly's had a great bounce back season. I thought when he came in, he had a good first couple of games, and then something happened after he got injured. And I don't think he fully recovered the entire season after his injury, but he's been really good this year. And I thought he was going to be a number 2 center back on the depth chart. And he's done a really good job of earning that starting center back position for the Galaxy. They didn't have him last week due to a non-COVID illness. But hopefully he'll be back this week, and they team up well. And on the right side, I think Julian Araujo is a national team player now for Mexico, and I think he's only going to get better. I mean, he's a young kid, and he's only going to get better. And along the way, when you're young, you might have a setback or 2, but I think the sky's the limit for him.
Raheem Edwards, Galaxy named him the club's player of the month for this past month. Looking ahead, again, you all are coming off that 1-0 loss at Rio Tinto against RSL. Chicharito, you mentioned, after 5 goals early in the season, has gone without a goal in the last 3 matches, looking for somebody to step up. But when Greg Vanney fills out his lineup this week, what do you think is going to be the toughest decision for him to make with those starting 11?
Well, I think he'll probably be making a decision on his wingers, and how he wants to go about playing. Away from home is a little bit different than playing at home, as you know. And so I think, he'll probably look at the entire season, what Austin has done and how they've played and what their tendencies are. I don't think the Galaxy are changing too much. They're a team that likes to be in possession. They're a team that likes to attack. Most likely they'll play with a high line, as they have done under the Vanney era so far. I don't expect them to change too much on that. But I think probably the discussion will be during training this week is that, hey, we got to find an early goal to set the tempo and have the game come to us. because as the game goes longer and it's still 0-0 and we're still pressing, the chances of opening ourselves up in the back, with fatigue, that becomes more likely.
Have you been to Austin, Texas before?
I've never been. My nephew went to college there, Southern, I believe it's called, Southern University in the Austin area.
Yeah, Southwestern up in Georgetown.
Southwestern,
probably.
thank you.
Yep.
That's where he went and ended up meeting his future wife there. So they keep on telling me, you have to go. But unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity yet.
Well, we look forward to having you in the near future. Enjoy the food and lifestyle here. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with Southern California, although apparently a lot of your neighbors have taken a liking to our area around here, buying up a lot of our homes over the past few years.
That's what I hear. I mean, they're making it very difficult for us to call California home. So we might have to look around a little bit.
Again, a lot of Joe's calls, especially when you're on radio, are over on YouTube, actually, which I assume your audience loves because they can then sync up your call with whatever the TV broadcast is. I'm sure that is one of the many perks of.
We try to.
When they put those calls on YouTube. Remind your listeners and our listeners, of course, again, this will be a national broadcast on FS1 and Fox Deportes. Remind us where we can find your call for the Galaxy.
I'll be at lagalaxy.com. There'll be a link there. It'll end up to the Galaxy's YouTube channel, so you can certainly pick it up there. And if you have the LA Galaxy app, I believe it'll be available there as well.
That is a 6 p.m. Central kick here in Austin, or I should say start to the broadcast, 4 o'clock Pacific Coast time over there. And the reason why I stumbled there is because it is actually a 6:25 kick. So you'll get to hear Joe talk for an extra 25 minutes before opening kick. We'll do the same on our broadcast on Alt 97.5 FM as we go live at 6 p.m. Central as well. Joe, look forward to 2 great matches this month for Austin. All 5 matches in the month of May will be against teams that are currently above that Western Conference cutoff line. So this will be a great test beginning with this Sunday.
Looking forward to it. I know it's a big match on the calendar for the Galaxy. One game at a time is how the Galaxy has taken it so far. So thanks for having me on. And you guys do a great presentation. So I'm looking forward to it.
Joe, have a great call and best of luck this year.
Thank you. Same to you.